Welcome back. You have just tuned in to Women's AM. This morning, I'm joined by Sister Nusrat, Sister Nazia, and our special guest this morning is Naveed Khan. Welcome back to the show, Sister Naveed. It's such a pleasure to have you on. And of course, I didn't see you last time, so it's very nice to see you. And we were talking a little bit before the show about children and, you know, getting them involved in Ramadan. And I understand, you know, you've got two boys. How have you kind of encouraged them to get involved?
You never really know what the right age is to involve your children into the actual act of fasting. Yes. And actually getting them involved into the fasting aspect of it. Yeah. And I've had my nearly 8-year-old one come home and say, "Mummy, there's 5 children in my class that are fasting and I want to fast the whole day."
Wow, mashallah.
And then you have to measure each child by their ability plus their health, and he gets really bad nosebleeds every single night, and he suffers from iron deficiency, and it's like, no, I don't think you're quite ready for a full day of fasting.
But you know what, I think the nice thing is that he wants to, and he's got that enthusiasm and motivation to do it.
So he does up to snack time, he'll do up to lunchtime, or the whole of the school day he did yesterday. And it's a nice way of just introducing them into it.
I think that's good. You want to kind of harness that, don't you? You don't want to discourage it, but as you said, you know, being sure that it's the right time. So it's a, you know, juggling act. Without further ado, let's go straight to her views, where today we're discussing what is Ramadan like for those of us who can't fast. Ramadan, for millions across the world, means collectively joining in fasting and increasing other acts of worship, such as prayer. However, for those of us who cannot fast during Ramadan, it can be a time when we can feel left out and uncertain in how to be productive in drawing closer to Allah and engage with the spirit of Ramadan. Of course, this is a live discussion with the sisters, so please do call in with your comments or questions. The number is on your screens now, or why not tweet us at Islam Channel, #WAM15. So, Sister Naveed, I'm going to come straight to you with this one. And as I said, you know, lots of women do experience these times in Ramadan, but what are these reasons why people can't fast?
I think I was looking at this, the whole topic of why people can't fast, and to be honest with you, there's so many reasons. You know, women in particular may not be able to fast because they're pregnant, or they're breastfeeding, or it's just the time of the month that they can't fast. People can be sick, they can actually have terminal illnesses, or just have the odd blip of when they're not well and they can't fast. And, you know, you could be travelling. There's so many reasons for why people may not be able to fast, and it can be really difficult for them to get their head around the fact that they can't participate in what they think is Ramadan. And especially with the elderly, with my own parents. My mum's not been able to fast for 5 years now.
Oh, really?
And we literally had to wean her into it. Literally, you know, she suffers from diabetes, blood pressure problems, so much. And it was literally at the end of every Ramadan, by week 3, she was going into hospital, and somebody had to go in with her. So we literally had to wean her into this idea of, Mum, you're no longer healthy enough. Your health is not allowing it. You're getting old, and you just need to stop. And also, I think the judgment that people pass on you as well, say if you're pregnant, and it's like, well, I did it. You know, I managed to fast the whole of Ramadan. Why can't you? I went on Hajj, or sorry, not Hajj, of course, Umrah, and you know, and I did X, Y, and Z activity. So why are you struggling? And then you start to feel guilty, and you think you're not actually participating in Ramadan in the correct way. And similarly with my dad, who managed to do so much, and this is his 2nd Ramadan where he's not fasting, and you feel it as a child as well, that my parents are getting old. And it does affect you, and it can be really difficult.
I think that's absolutely true, and I think it can affect, you know, how we participate in Ramadan. Sister Nusrat, in what ways can it affect people's participation in Ramadan?
Sister Naveed made a very good point about how some people feel judgment, and that judgment actually can translate into affecting the way you participate in Ramadan. Like, for example, she gave the reasons as to why people don't fast, so menses, or childbirth, for example, or even pregnancy. These are legitimate reasons to why people can't fast, but because of that judgment, it affects people's ability to kind of feel part of the community, and they even blame themselves for things they can't help. Who says that because you can't fast you're not going to enjoy, you can't gain reward? Who says that it's even your fault in the first place? If anything, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it, through His mercy and grace, has made it easier for you to join in other acts of worship that help you draw closer to Him and help you gain the most of this blessed month. We also find that with people not being able to pray, it does affect their ability to participate in Ramadan, because some people use the masjid as a means of not only socialising, but, you know, enhancing their spirituality, enhancing their acts of worship. I know one sister that actually, when she can't fast, or when she doesn't go to the masjid, she kind of does feel that kind of detachment. So that isolation, particularly when you are ill as well, for example, does affect you. And particularly when you're bedbound and you cannot actually do anything, you feel very impotent. You feel that you can't actually do anything. You think, oh, what's the point? But there is a point. Allah's made it easier for you to look at other acts of worship as well that can help you.
Yeah.
Can I just add, you know, just to the isolation aspect, it's also quite depressing for people as well.
Yes.
You know, they can get really down and feel really demoralised, as if they're not worthy of anything.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. But Sister Nazia, when it comes to kind of participation in Ramadan, you know, there's so much more to this blessed month than just fasting.
There is, and I think, you know, when you look at all the activities that's happening around you, you have people visiting the masjids, participating in Taraweeh, reciting Quran. You know, there's definitely this drive where if you are sitting there not fasting and yet you see people around you pushing for activities, then it can have that impact on you.
Absolutely.
And it can actually affect your own spirituality and you actually attaining that spiritual level that you would want as anyone else. I think particularly the issue that I wanted to look at was with the women who are experiencing menses and postnatal bleeding. And it's very important for us to not look at it, because it can be very easy to kind of look, well, we've been hard done by, or kind of start looking at it in a very negative way, that we're going to now lose out on reward. Who says you lose out on reward? It's the way that you look at it. The point is, this is something that we should not do. First and foremost, we shouldn't do that. By design, this is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created women. Yeah, this is how it is. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran that He has created us in the best of molds in Surah At-Tin. So this is clearly telling us we shouldn't view this as something like a flaw in us, but rather this is a natural process, something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has designed for us, and this is His will. And this is why we have that story of where Aisha radiallahu anhu, who burst into tears and the Prophet found her. This is when they were about to go and do Hajj, and he said, what is it? Has your menses started? And then he reminded her of the fact that that this is something which Allah has destined for the daughter of Adam. So for us to be able to go forward, we need to have that acceptance and realize that this is a test like any other test, similarly for the one who's sick as well. Don't look at it as this is now an opportunity, I've lost reward. No, the test, even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we know He tests us through our health. So this is something that is an opportunity for expiation of sins, it is an opportunity for reward. So we have to be at that point where we don't complain, but rather look at our situation and say, well, this is how it is. How are we now going to move forward? Because there are things we can do. Ramadan is more than just the fast, it is more than the Taraweeh, the reciting Quran. There are lots of things that can be done, but in order to get out of that, to be able to appreciate that, you need to get out of that kind of mindset where you're looking at it from a very negative perspective. I'm going to discuss that.
I think this is true, isn't it? This is the month of the Quran, you know, so there's a lot more that we can be doing. But I think when it comes to actively engaging in Ramadan, it can be really difficult for those who aren't fasting. Nusrat, can you expand on that a little bit?
It can be difficult, particularly when we look at the reasons to why it's difficult. It's difficult because of the mentality that some people have. Some people have this all or nothing mentality where if I'm not fasting like everybody else, then I don't want anything at all. And yes, I do admit that fasting does play an integral role within Ramadan. Obviously, it's the month where you are abstaining from food, but when you take the abstention of food and water as being the be-all and end-all of your Ramadan, and if you can't have it, you don't want anything at all, that's kind of where you're going wrong. As if you're not good enough, but Allah has made it easy for you in other ways to do that, and that's not just something that's restricted to necessarily the women. Even the men, if you can't fast, you can engage in acts of worship by doing things like dhikr. You can perhaps host an iftar for people in your community that are just not able enough to feed themselves or are ostracized. So there are other ways you can do that. It's also difficult to engage in Ramadan when you don't feel part of the community. So going off the back of people that are ostracized, they don't feel part of the community because they can't fast, or because, for example, for people who are in the position of converts, they may not understand that actually this is their first Ramadan, I can't fast, what do I do? So because they don't feel necessarily part of that community, that's when they feel a bit deflated and jaded.
Can I just add, sorry, there's a hadith in which Muhammad ﷺ is reported to have said that Tarawih, in regards to Tarawih, he said that he who observes optional prayer throughout Ramadan, out of sincerity of faith and in the hope of earning reward, will have his past sins forgiven, inshallah. And there's so much of this mentality in the community as well, that if you're not fasting, then you shouldn't pray your Tarawih.
I think that's true, isn't it?
Yeah.
That it is, as Nusrat said, the all or nothing mentality.
Yeah.
So beautiful hadith, thank you for sharing that. And what a great discussion we are having about a topic that affects so many of us. And the sisters have more advice for you in a few minutes. But right now we have to take a quick break. Just before we go, a reminder of this week's competition.